What's up, everybody? Lou from TSSZ here on the show floor at PAX East 2019. Today we are here with Thomas from Remedy talking about their newest game, Control. Thomas, thanks so much for taking some time this afternoon. For our viewers who don't know, what is Control?
Well, Control is an amazing video game, right? So Control is the next game from us at Remedy, and it's a third-person supernatural action-adventure. It's got a lot of sort of Metroidvania influence to it. So you get to play as Jessie Faden, who's our heroine. And Jessie has had something happen to her in her childhood, something that's kind of, something's happened there. And later in life, she ends up at the oldest house, which is this building in Manhattan in New York. And it happens to be the home of the Federal Bureau of Control. Now, as Jessie gets there, this otherworldly presence known as the Hiss invades the Bureau and invades the oldest house and kills the Bureau's director, Trench. And then things happen, and there's this ritualistic process, and Jessie has to become the new director of the Bureau, imbued with supernatural abilities. But maybe she's always had an inclination to something like that. So rest assured, all of this will make perfect sense in the finished game. I dare say we do know how to do story at Remedy. We just don't really want to give it away before you play it. But that's kind of what the game is on a high level.
Okay, and you walked right into my next question. Remedy known for strong storytelling in games like Alan Wake and Quantum Break. We can expect something similar in terms of a strong narrative component from Control?
Absolutely. So story and characters are very important to Remedy. The demo doesn't really showcase much of that at all because we feel we have a lot more to prove on the gameplay side of things. We're really going for a gameplay driven game. The mechanics are really solid, they're deep. There's a good level of customization to the service weapon that Jessie uses. You can tweak her abilities. We won't want to ruin the story, but of course there's a lot of storytelling. There's, these short live action videos that you can find around the oldest house. Then the former director kind of shows up as a ghostly apparition talking to Jessie. There's of course these documents that you can find, and of course there are cutscenes as well. So I'd say it's really combining all the different things Remedy's done over the years and trying to really make it into that really, really polished, great, entertaining video game.
And sort of speaking of that, when you talk about the different experiences that Remedy has made over the years, especially games like Alan Wake and Quantum Break, can you talk about how those titles and others in the company's history might have informed or inspired what Control is doing?
Right, so, Alan Wake and Quantum Break were very kind of dictated by the narrative. So the story came first and then everything else after that. In the case of Control, the world came first. We built the world and then we started figuring out the gameplay and then the story. But every game you do is kind of trying to react to what you did previously. So Quantum Break was great for what it was, but it was very kind of linear, over in 8 hours, and a lot of us at Remedy were like, man, we spent 5 years making these things. We want to build something that would last a little bit longer. And with Control, we hope that we have that. So you have your storyline, your main quest line, then you have side missions that really enrich in the world, kind of bring more story. They tell more story about this, the NPCs you meet, because not everybody is hostile in the oldest house, so you meet plenty of allies as well. So I'd like to think we've kind of taken the best bits from our previous games, but it's less about having tons of cinematics interrupting the gameplay. It's much more about environmental storytelling and so on. And 3 years ago, when we really started working on the game and figuring it out, one of the things we discussed was Max Payne 2 kind of felt like the last Remedy game where everything worked really well. The story was great, the replay value was great, the visuals were great, the character was great. And Alan Wake and Quantum Break were great, but the balance wasn't there. The gameplay was relatively simplistic in Alan Wake, so we wanted to improve in Quantum Break. You had the time abilities and all that, and we were able to pull off this whole crazy combination of live action and everything in Quantum, which was great, but maybe there the balance wasn't quite right, so we're really striving to just make Control as good as we can.
And let's get into the gameplay a little bit, because there is a complex set of moves that Jessie has. In addition to the gunplay, there's the levitation, there's the great slam feature where you can go in and just beat the hell out of a guy. Can you talk a little bit about how her specific move set was defined and how the team sort of polished up the core gameplay?
Well, the team is very heavily still busily polishing the game back in Finland. Hello. Pretty early on we knew that we wanted to do this supernatural kind of take. And have a little bit of sort of a superhero vibe to it, which also a bit what Quantum Break was, and we also kind of want to deviate from that. And levitation was something pretty early on that we had, because that makes the game feel distinct. It's a very, very powerful thing. It has a big impact on level design. We have to have those larger spaces that you can really kind of levitate around. And then launch has really been the trickiest thing. So launch is the ability where Jesse grabs objects. There's 3 different sizes of objects, so small lamps and then chairs, sofas, and then you can even pick up like forklift trucks and so on if you upgrade yourself enough. And making sure that grabbing objects and throwing them feels as satisfying as using a gun, because we all know like pulling off that really awesome headshot, it just feels good. Like and it's very hard to do that with physically throwing stuff, but I think we've gotten there. And it's just a combination of the animation, the sense of weight, the sound effect that you have when she grabs an object, and it's like you hear that swoosh sound and then you throw it. All these things come into play. And I think we've surprised ourselves now, like throwing stuff and the destruction is a lot of fun, and the amount of destruction there is, or reactive environments I should say, is pretty impressive. So it's really sort of like a sandbox where we give you the gun, which is transforming, we give you the abilities, and it's really up to players how they want to use them and how they want to also customize them.
And I can kind of attest to that. When you pick up a ton of rocks and just throw them at somebody, it is really, really fun. So this is the first time that Control has had other people kind of get their hands on it. Can you talk a little bit about how it feels to finally get a multi-year project like this in front of people for the first time?
Terrifying. Like really, it's so remember traditionally we've made games and the demos we've given have been very controlled. We should have a drinking game. How many times are we going to say control? And the demos have been kind of like you sit down, we show them very carefully, and we want to kind of, I personally really, really wanted to change that, and the only way to kind of prove the fact that this is a more gameplay-driven game is let people play it. Now, for a lot of us at the studio, it's like, what? We're going to show an unfinished game 5 months before it ships? It's like, it's not running smooth enough. It doesn't have the balancing right, but like, it's good enough. Let people experience it. Let's get some feedback on board. I mean, and it's invigorating. I mean, I'm sending, video back to the studio, and people are, oh wow, people are digging it, and like we're getting comments and everything. So it's great, but like, games are a weird thing. Like the 90% of the quality of the game happens literally in the last 10% of development, where all the pieces are there and the engineers can finally start fine-tuning everything, and the designers can like make the numbers right, so the upgrades are right and all that. So it's kind of scary, but like on the other hand, demos are really important from like an internal perspective as well, because then we have like sort of a milestone that we can reach. Like, okay, we're going to do a demo for PAX, and then everybody works really hard to make it happen, and then we move on to like again working on the game. So no, I'm moving forward. So we're definitely going to be doing more of this, and obviously, Sony is giving us a great opportunity to be on their booth. So it's great.
You said about 5 months away from release. When can we play Control, and on what platforms?
So Control will be out 27th of August, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.